Ken Engquist, the CEO of Intrepid Metals. Ken, good to see you.
Good to see you.
You were recently appointed, or relatively recently appointed CEO. You've got an extensive history in the junior mining sector, but I'm interested as sort of a new set of eyes, if you will, as of last September. You know, what were your priorities when you hit the ground? What did you see when you joined in Intrepid that made you see the future here and made you want to take on the role?
Well, I was previously with another company with a large copper gold asset in the Yukon, which is a really nice ore body. It had its encumbrances of location and remoteness, big power, and infrastructure issues and stuff like that that'll get resolved, and it'll be an absolutely great mine when it gets built. And I was looking for a secondary asset to draw excitement to our shareholder base and retain investors and bring in new investors. And so something that would do that, and I came across the Intrepid portfolio, and I really liked it. I thought it was a good fit, and not only that, it ticks a lot of the other boxes that this project in the Yukon didn't. It's sitting in Arizona, which is an incredible mining state with a lot of existing current mining operations, a lot of exploration, very prolific. 70% of the U.S. copper comes from the state of Arizona. Its permitting regime is excellent in support. We have a portfolio of assets that stayed that we selected that are not in national forests. We have a big chunk of our land endowment is private land, so when we drill, we don't have to get permits. So this one was ticking all the boxes, and the reason it didn't exist before, or why people haven't heard of it before, is because we didn't just take over and do an earn-in with a single vendor. We took 3 different properties and we consolidated them, and that's what the group before I took over as CEO. I left the previous company, and shortly after was asked to join the board a year ago last September, and then in September I took over as CEO. The previous CEO did a great job, Ken Brophy, of consolidating that land package. And that's really the strength of the story there. That de-risked the Corral project immensely. And so now you've got this truly district scale opportunity that's nearly 10,000 acres. And it's just, you can see the different vendors when you look at the leapfrog model that we're building out from the 50,000 meters of drill core data that we have. We don't have any core because of the feuding and the commercial disputes between the previous owners. They destroyed each other's core. Nice. So our maiden drill program last spring was 100% informed by that data. So we tried to twin as many holes as we could, as much as we could decipher in the data. And you'll see that we had some pretty impressive results. We put out a great press release in the summer, in July, with some impressive numbers: 113 meters at 1.5% copper, another 200 meters, nearly 200 meters at 0.7%, all near surface in Arizona, private land, and open pittable. So that drew a lot of excitement. It led to us becoming aware in late last year, in the fall, in late October, that there's been some staking going on around our property, immediately adjacent to our eastern border and western border, Rio Tinto and Ivanhoe Electric, respectively. And which I think, in order for those staking positions to have come to the surface at around that time, they would have, I'm assuming that came from the press release that we put out in the summer that was compelling enough for them to go out and stake the ground instead of coming to us and asking us to look into our data first. Sure. So it was good. It's exciting. It's a little get your back up, not back up, but get you a little like, oh shoot, I hope they don't take us over or take us out or something too soon. But we immediately decided to continue with taking on some more interest from other individuals or other groups. We have, since early December, signed more than a half dozen CAs with major copper companies. We've had most of them gone to site. Some have completed their due diligence. A couple more will be at site by following PDAC next week. And then, it's resulted in us getting to a stage where we are actively in discussions with potential strategic partners and are currently passing around draft term sheets.
So strategic financing partners with a view to investing in.
Yeah, with strategic partnership, investment at a premium to our current share price, coupled with what we think is a pretty strong soft book from a marketing trip we recently did in Europe.
Right.
And
whereabouts were you in Europe? Just
well, we did a 5-day trip. It was pretty intense, but it's one of the most valuable trips I've ever been on as far as marketing. It was starting in London on Monday, and then Zurich, Geneva, Brussels, and Paris on Friday.
Right.
And
so, yes,
it was intense.
Yeah, the tour, yeah, that is.
It was good though. It was so valuable and so efficient, and these groups have seen the project before a year prior with our chairman Mark Morabito and our former CEO Ken Brophy had presented it to them last year. So they were familiar with it, but they hadn't seen it since we did the drill results and we put out the press release on the land staking.
Right, and so when you think about Corral, obviously Rio next door, Ivanhoe Electric next door, and additional interest on the CA front. You're 75 clicks away from Taylor.
Yeah,
and
Tombstone South.
And I guess I'm interested in that's your Tombstone South property, but you're in terms of the the timeline that it takes to get through this process we were talking about earlier. So 2015. Taylor's discovered, 2018, South 32 takes it out for 1.3 billion. 2025, it's on the verge of production. So two things. One is investors need to understand the patience. Yeah. The second thing is that you're where you are with Corral, having a strategic at this early stage would be a potential game changer in terms of advancing that timeline from an investor return perspective, I guess.
Yeah, and to put that in perspective, our chairman, Mark Morabito, was chairman of Excelsior, which is now called Gunnison, just to the north of us. He was chairman for Excelsior for 12 years. They permitted that mine in 2.5 years, and that's extraordinarily fast. Usually, you'll see in North America, specifically in Canada, it takes about 3 to 4 years, 3 being really optimistic, but 4 years to get through the environmental assessment process and to get to that decision. And then usually there's another couple of years of extra water permitting that's tacked onto that. Right. 2.5 years speaks to the strength of this jurisdiction and specifically Cochise County where we are, and the fact of how important it is to stay out of the national forests. Yeah. Hermosa's in the national forest. They've got a great land position, but it's small. Right. So on surface, they have very little room to expand if they do need to expand their operations on surface. Fortunately, it's an underground mine, and they can do that. But our Tombstone South project is very analogous to the Taylor Deeps deposit, in how it sits in relative location to a low economic porphyry, a fault zone, and 2 different aged limestones. So you'll see Hermosa, the Taylor deposit sits between 2 different aged limestones, and that fluids came up through a fault system with the heat source being a low economic porphyry on the other side of that fault system. Pushed it up into there, and then it deposited out into that limestone interface. We did an IP survey in May of 22, a deep IP, and starting around somewhere near 500 meters down, we're seeing an anomaly light up like crazy. That's showing in exactly the same relevant location as the Taylor deposit is, adjacent to a fault at that interface, the same limestone units as at Taylor, and it's interesting because if you asked our geos, if you wind the clock back and you asked our geos from let's say September of 2023, ask them, or May of 22, let's say, when they did the IP anomaly survey, and they found the anomaly. If you ask them which project they wanted to prioritize and drill first, they'd say Tombstone South.
Really?
Yeah. The thing is though, Tombstone South, it's we did a raise in January of 24, sorry, of $6.6 million. And in February, we were in the ground drilling and drilled through the end of May into June, finished that off, put the results out in July. And we did 4,800 meters, we did 25 holes, 13 of them at our main zone Ringo. And, but to drill that anomaly, we need to, at Tombstone South, we have to drill 1,000 meter deep holes. And each one of those holes is going to be $500,000. Yeah. So it's a big risk, and we can do 2 of them. We have an obligation with the vendor of Tombstone South to drill or to do $1 million worth of work on site this year. Mm-hmm. So when we complete a financing, we'll go over to Tombstone South and drill that. But we thought it was less risky, and for getting the company off the ground and drawing the interest, is we focused our first use of funds on Corral. And so we've developed Corral now to the level of interest where we're getting a lot of excitement, and the decision was good to go that way, because we can do, several holes for the price of one deep 500 or 1,000 meter hole, right? Sure. So, but we're excited about Tombstone. It could be a situation where if we hit that anomaly, it might be something that we want to spin off into something else and separate the value streams for investors to choose where they want to put their money, either in Corral or in Tombstone South.
So when we look forward then to 2025, you got $1 million to spend at Tombstone South. Yeah. You've got CAs to assess and understand at Corral. What are some of the other milestones then that investors should be using to track your progress here over the course of the year?
Well, the next one would be when do we start the drills? Yeah, we got to complete a financing. Obviously, we've got $1 million in the till right now, so we're going to focus our efforts and our spending on generating that next financing, and which we feel like is in the very near future. As I said, we're in active discussions with strategics right now. We're passing around term sheets. We look to raise a significant amount of capital for that financing. We've scoped out as much as 17,000 plus meters for the next drill program. And the reason I say 17,000 meters, maybe that doesn't line up with budgets. We don't know what the budget's going to be yet, because we got to see how much we're going to raise. So 17,000 meters, but we've prioritized it in such a way that the holes that we think are going to be most successful first, and then to least successful. We've broken it also up into 75% of the program will be focused on infill and step-out drilling of the current zones of Holiday, Earp, and Ringo, to tie those together, because those were separate owners previously, and you can see when you look at the leapfrog model, the gaps in between there was no drilling done. Right. We don't have to drill deep. We can drill 250 to 300 meter holes, which is great. We identified about 25% of the program is for exploration. Now we've got what's called a CRD deposit, a carbonate replacement deposit, largely right now, but there is a porphyry source, or porphyry sources, that fed those systems, right? There's some skarns, and we feel like we have some good ideas on some targets. And if we hit the porphyry, that's what the majors want to see. And that's the large, long life mine, right? Because the Copper Queen project, or Copper Queen mine that Phelps Dodge ran and owned down in Bisbee, just 25 kilometers south of us, which is owned by Freeport right now. They started mining their CRD at 53 million tons and 6%. And then they started mining their porphyry, and they mined it for another 60 years. So that's why we've got the interest, right? Because nobody's found the porphyry yet, because those 3 little individual operations weren't looking for a porphyry. Yeah. They were looking for surface gold and copper and stuff like that. And so we think we have some good targets. We've identified somewhere between 3 and 5 that are just focusing specifically on the porphyry. The rest of the greenfield exploration will be focused on targets that expand the CRD deposit.
Fantastic. That's a great update. You've obviously got a full slate of.
We've got a lot going on.
A lot going on. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you.
That's been Ken Engquist, CEO of Intrepid Metals. Intrepid trades on the TSX as INTR.